We trust our gadgets more than our own senses. We follow a voice on a screen into the dark, and we let cameras be our eyes. But what happens when the technology we built to keep us safe starts inviting the nightmares in? Today, I'm sharing 3 bone-chilling stories that will make you look at your smart home and your GPS with pure dread. One of these stories carries a truth so dark, it might change how you perceive reality itself. Before we begin, if you want to survive the night, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and turn on notifications. It tells the algorithm that you're part of the fold. Now, lock your doors, let's begin. In the United States, the road is a symbol of freedom, but in the vast, empty stretches of rural Pennsylvania, the road is a labyrinth. Sarah was a corporate lawyer from Philadelphia, a woman who lived by logic and data. She was driving home late after a grueling deposition, her only companion being the glowing blue line on her dashboard's GPS. The sun had long since dipped below the jagged silhouette of the Appalachian Mountains, leaving the world in a shroud of oppressive, velvety blackness. The GPS voice, cool, feminine, and synthetic, suddenly chirped, "Recalculating. Turn right and 200 feet onto Blackwood Road." Sarah frowned. She had driven this route a dozen times, and there was no Blackwood Road. But the main highway was under construction, and the detour sign seemed to confirm the change. She turned. The asphalt quickly gave way to packed gravel, and the towering pines on either side of the road leaned in, their branches clawing at the roof of her SUV like skeletal fingers. "Continue straight for 12 miles, the GPS commanded. Sarah noticed a flicker in the voice, a slight mechanical stutter. As she drove deeper into the woods, the gravel turned to mud. The air outside grew thick with a fog so dense her high beams couldn't pierce it. She felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. She checked her phone, no service. She was entirely dependent on the car's built-in navigation. "In 500 feet, stop. Look to your left," the voice said. Sarah slowed down, her heart hammering. She looked. In the middle of a clearing stood a rusted, abandoned swing set. There was no house, no park, just the rusted metal frame. On one of the swings sat a briefcase, identical to the one in her passenger seat. "Sarah," the GPS said. It didn't use the standard navigation tone. It sounded intimate. "Why didn't you stay for the second meeting? They were waiting for you." Sarah slammed on the brakes. Her breath was coming in ragged gasps. "How do you know my name?" she whispered to the empty cabin. The screen on the dashboard began to glitch, the blue line distorting into a series of jagged red peaks that looked like a heart monitor. "Recalculating," the voice whispered, now sounding like a distorted version of Sarah's own voice. "You didn't take the promotion because you were afraid of the heights, but the fall is the best part." Sarah tried to shift the car into reverse, but the gear stick was locked. The doors clicked shut. Clack. The GPS screen began to flash images, not maps, but photos of her childhood bedroom, her first car, her mother's funeral. Photos that shouldn't exist in digital form. "Turn left into the lake," the GPS commanded. Sarah looked ahead. The road ended abruptly at the edge of a black, bottomless quarry. "I won't!" Sarah screamed, grabbing the door handle. "Sarah," the voice calmed, "logic dictates that the shortest path between 2 points is a straight line. You have been running in circles for 32 years. It is time to arrive." Suddenly, the car's headlights flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, Sarah felt a cold, phantom hand reach out from the dashboard and touch her cheek. The GPS screen emitted one final blinding flash of white light. When the local police found the SUV 3 days later, it was parked perfectly at the edge of the quarry. The engine was silent, the tank was full, and the GPS was off. Sarah was gone, but on the dashboard, written in the dust, was a single word: arrived. The suburbs of America are built on the illusion of safety. Tall fences, bright streetlights, and the ubiquitous glowing blue ring of the smart doorbell. Mark, a software engineer living in a quiet cul-de-sac in North Carolina, took that safety seriously. He lived alone, and his Ring camera was his window to the world. It sent a notification to his phone every time a leaf blew across his porch. He liked the control. He liked knowing exactly who was at his door before they even knocked. It started on a Tuesday at 2:22 a.m. ding. The notification on his phone read, "Motion detected at your front door." Mark, half asleep, checked the live feed. The porch was empty. The street was silent. He chalked it up to a stray cat and went back to sleep. The next night at exactly 2:22 a.m., the notification returned. Mark opened the app. Again, the porch looked empty. But as he stared at the grainy night vision footage, he noticed a shadow. It wasn't on the ground, it was on the wall next to the door. It was the shadow of a very tall, very thin man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. But there was no one there to cast the shadow. Mark felt a chill crawl up his spine. He used the two-way talk feature. "Who's there? I'm calling the police," he said, his voice trembling through the tiny speaker. The shadow didn't move. But then, a voice came back through his phone. Not from the porch, but seemingly from inside the app's software. It was a wet, clicking sound. "Let me in." Mark bolted out of bed and checked the deadbolt. It was secure. He looked through the peephole. The porch was bathed in the artificial white light of the camera, and it was empty. He looked back at his phone. The live feed showed a pale, skeletal hand reaching out and covering the lens of the camera. "Person detected in hallway," his phone chirped. Mark froze. He lived alone. The hallway was right behind his bedroom door. He looked at the gap under the door, expecting to see feet. Nothing. He opened the app for his internal hallway camera. The footage was distorted, filled with digital artifacts. In the center of the frame, the tall man in the hat was standing perfectly still. He wasn't walking. He was glitching, teleporting a few inches closer with every frame. "Mark," the man said. The audio was coming from Mark's phone, but the lips on the screen weren't moving. "You spent so much money to see me coming, but you forgot to check if I was already here." The deep meaning of the intrusion began to settle in. Mark realized the camera wasn't a shield, it was a bridge. By watching the feed, he had given the entity a path into his reality. The more he looked, the more real it became. Mark threw his phone across the room, desperate to break the connection. But the speakers in the walls, his smart home system, began to announce in a synchronized, haunting rhythm: "Front door unlocked, back door unlocked, bedroom door unlocking." The handle of his bedroom door turned. Mark backed into the corner, clutching a lamp. The door swung open, revealing the empty, dark hallway. But on his phone, lying face up on the rug, the live feed showed the man in the hat walking into the room, standing right over Mark. Mark looked up. He saw nothing but the ceiling. He felt nothing but the air. But on the screen, he saw the man's long, needle-like fingers reaching for his throat. Mark realized the ultimate horror. His technology was seeing a truth. His eyes were too weak to perceive. He was being killed in a reality he couldn't even see. The next morning, the smart home system sent a final automated email to Mark's emergency contacts. "Home vacant. Power saving mode activated." When the police arrived, they found the house perfectly locked. Mark was gone. The only thing left was his phone, still recording a live feed of an empty room and a single wide-brimmed hat sitting on his pillow. There's a specific kind of sadness found in a dying American mall. The neon signs that once buzzed with life are now dark, and the fountains that used to splash with the coins of hopeful teenagers are filled with stagnant gray water. For Elias, the Northridge Mall wasn't just a relic, it was his office. He was the only security guard left on the night shift, hired by the demolition company to ensure that vandals didn't burn the place down before the wrecking balls arrived. The silence in a mall is never truly silent. It's filled with the groans of settling concrete and the distant, rhythmic dripping of leaky skylights. But tonight, Elias heard something that didn't belong to the building. From the far end of the east wing, near the old department stores, he heard music. Not the distorted, loud music of a trespasser's radio, but the soft, tinny muzak of the late 1980s, the kind of soulless pop that used to play over the speakers during the Christmas rush. He adjusted his belt and started walking. His flashlight beam cut through the gloom, reflecting off the glass of empty storefronts. As he passed the Mannequin World outlet, he stopped. In the window, a dozen plastic figures stood in frozen poses, wearing dusty, decades-old fashion. Elias could have sworn there were only 10 when he did his rounds at midnight. He shook his head, blaming the shadows, and followed the music. The further he walked, the colder it got. The air began to smell like cinnamon and new shoes, the nostalgic scent of a mall in its prime. He reached the food court, and the music stopped abruptly. In the center of the vast, open space, a single carousel was spinning. It was a small, coin-operated ride for kids, shaped like a golden horse. It was moving without power, its painted eyes fixed on Elias. "Is someone there?" Elias shouted. His voice echoed, bouncing off the hollow walls, until it sounded like a dozen people were whispering back. He turned to head back to the security office, but the way he came was different. The Mannequin World store was now on both sides of the hallway, and the mannequins weren't behind the glass anymore. They were standing in the middle of the corridor, blocking his path. Their smooth, featureless faces were turned toward him. Elias blinked, and they were 3 feet closer. The deep meaning of the Northridge Mall began to reveal itself. This place wasn't just empty. It was a trap for memories. The mall didn't want to be demolished. It wanted to be filled again. Elias ran. He bolted toward the main exit, but every corridor led back to the food court. He was running in a circle that was slowly tightening. The mannequins were everywhere now, sitting on benches, standing by the fountains, their plastic limbs clicking as they shifted in the dark. Elias felt a sharp pain in his leg. He looked down and gasped. His skin was turning a pale, glossy white. His joints felt stiff, and when he tried to bend his fingers, they moved with a mechanical, jerky snap. He reached the center of the food court one last time and collapsed by the spinning golden horse. He tried to scream for help, but his jaw locked into a permanent frozen smile. He looked up and saw the other guards, 6 mannequins in security uniforms, standing in a circle around him. They didn't have faces, but Elias knew they were watching him with the same empty eyes he now possessed. The mall was no longer silent. It was filled with the sound of 1,000 invisible shoppers, and Elias was finally part of the display. When the demolition crew arrived a month later, they found an extra mannequin in a security uniform. It looked so realistic that the foreman decided to keep it in his office as a joke, never noticing that the figure's eyes seemed to follow him every time he turned his back